The war had turned Earth into a shadow of its former self. Cities that once glowed with light now lay in silence, their streets broken and covered in ash. The sky was often filled with the trails of enemy ships, streaking across like burning scars. Commander Elias Kane had fought in many battles during these long years. He had seen victory in some, disaster in others. But on this day he stood surrounded on a ruined battlefield, the smoke of destruction thick in the air. The Xyrath had come like a storm. They were taller than humans, armored in dark plates that seemed grown into their skin. Their weapons crackled with strange energy, tearing through defenses with ease. Many human soldiers had fallen, and those who survived had scattered. Elias had fought until his weapon was empty and his arm heavy with exhaustion. Now he was taken prisoner, his hands bound behind his back as two Xyrath guards shoved him forward. They marched him through a line of alien warriors. Their faces were sharp and cold, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Some sneered at him, some snarled, but none looked at him as a man. To them he was prey that had been caught. At the end of the line, standing tall above them all, was their commander. General Lyra. Elias had heard her name before. Whispers carried across the battlefield spoke of her as a ruthless leader, one who never lost a campaign. She was known for breaking cities in a single strike, for bending enemy soldiers to her will with nothing more than fear. Now she stood there in her dark armor, her long hair tied back, her expression sharp as a blade. Her soldiers bowed slightly as she approached, but her eyes stayed fixed on the human in chains. Commander of the Earth Forces, one of her lieutenants announced, pushing Elias forward until he stumbled and fell to his knees in front of her. "We deliver him alive as ordered." General Lyra stepped closer. Her presence was heavy, like the air itself grew colder with every step she took. Elias lifted his head and met her gaze. Her eyes were a strange shade, almost silver, reflecting light in a way that made them seem like steel. "You led this defense?" she asked, her voice deep and commanding. "I did," Elias replied simply. His throat was dry, but his words were steady. He knew pleading would not save him. Lyra studied him for a moment, then raised a blade from her side. It was long and curved, humming faintly with alien energy. Her soldiers watched in silence, waiting for the strike. The order had been clear: kill the human leader, break the spirit of resistance. Elias kept his gaze steady. He did not beg, did not look away. His body ached, his strength was almost gone, but his pride remained. If this was his end, then he would not give them the satisfaction of fear. He remembered the faces of his fallen comrades, the homes destroyed, the people who still looked to the sky with hope. Someone had to stand tall even in defeat. The soldiers began to grow restless. They wanted blood. Some shouted in their rough voices, demanding their general carry out the order. The sound echoed across the battlefield ruins, filling the air with raw hunger for death. Still, Lyra did not move. Her blade was raised, but her eyes stayed locked on Elias's face. What she saw there was different. He was only human, smaller and weaker than any of her kind, but he looked at her as though he were her equal. Most prisoners trembled. Most begged or cursed. But this one held still like a stone refusing to be crushed. It was not defiance for its own sake. There was something else, something she could not name. For a long moment the two stared at each other, as if the battlefield had gone silent around them. Elias felt the weight of death waiting above him, but he did not flinch. And Lyra, holding the blade, felt a hesitation she had never known before. Her army growled impatiently, their chants rising louder, but inside her mind, questions formed. Why did this fragile human stand so firmly? Why did his calm stare strike deeper than the screams of countless enemies she had silenced before? Elias spoke softly then, his voice carrying through the tension. "Do what you came to do. But know this, you can kill one man, you can burn a world, but you will never break what we are." The words sank into her like an unexpected blow. The soldiers laughed, mocking his bravery, but Lyra did not laugh. For the first time in many years, the general felt her hand tremble ever so slightly on the weapon's grip. The moment stretched. The chants grew louder. The battlefield air thickened with expectation. And yet she did not strike. The chants of the Xyrath warriors grew louder, their armored fists striking the ground in rhythm. They wanted the human's blood. It was the way of their people. An enemy leader must die in front of his defeated army, his death a warning to all who still resisted. The soldiers expected their general to act without hesitation, yet General Lyra's hand did not move. Her blade was still raised, but her silver eyes remained fixed on Elias Kane, as if she was reading something hidden in his calm expression. The silence between them stretched too long. A commander in dark armor stepped forward. "General," he growled, his voice heavy with impatience. The high command gave a direct order. "The human must die." Lyra did not turn to him. Her gaze stayed on Elias, who knelt before her with his hands bound but his spirit unbroken. "And what do you see, soldier?" she asked quietly, her voice carrying authority. The commander looked confused. "I see a weak creature, a defeated prey." Nothing more, her lips tightened. That was the answer she had expected. To the Xyrath, humans were fragile things, easy to crush, easy to enslave. Yet Lyra could not ignore what she saw now. This man had no weapon, no chance of survival, yet he faced death without fear. His eyes did not lower, his voice did not shake. Even in chains, he held a strength that was not of the body, but of something deeper. "Do you fear death, human?" she asked him suddenly, loud enough for the army to hear. Elias's reply was steady. "I fear nothing more than failing my people. If my death gives them even one more day of hope, then let it come." The soldiers laughed cruelly. To them, hope was weakness. But to Lyra, the words struck differently. She had fought countless enemies, broken their leaders, crushed their armies. None had spoken like this. None had looked into her eyes with such unshaken will. It unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. The chants of her warriors turned to roars, urging her to end it. Pressure pressed down from all sides. Lyra raised her blade higher, the humming edge glowing bright. Every soldier leaned forward, ready for the strike. Elias closed his eyes, his breathing calm. But instead of the sound of death, silence fell. The soldiers blinked in confusion as their general did something no one expected. She lowered the blade. Slowly, she stepped forward until she stood just inches from the kneeling human. The tension was so heavy that even the air seemed to hold its breath. Then, in a single motion, Lyra bent down and pressed her lips against his. The battlefield froze. The warriors, who had been howling for blood, now stood silent as stone. The kiss was brief, but to the Xyrath its meaning was absolute. In their culture, such an act was not love, but a bond of protection. By kissing him in front of her army, Lyra had claimed Elias as hers, marking him under her shield. To harm him now would mean challenging her honor, her authority, and her command. When she pulled back, Elias stared at her in disbelief. His heart pounded not from fear, but from shock. He had expected death, not this strange defiance. The soldiers murmured among themselves, confusion spreading like fire. Some looked angry, some terrified, and some simply stunned. One of her captains stepped forward, his face twisted with rage. "General, what is this madness? The High Command will not forgive such a betrayal. You have dishonored our army." Lyra turned her head slowly, her silver eyes sharp as blades. Silence. Her voice cut through the air like thunder. The captain froze, his protest dying in his throat. She looked back at Elias. "From this moment, no one touches him. He is under my protection." The warriors erupted in outrage. Some shouted, some beat their fists against their armor, demanding explanation. But none dared raise a weapon against their general. The code of their people was unbreakable. If she had claimed the human, then so it would be, unless someone challenged her directly. Elias spoke quietly, almost in disbelief. "Why did you do that?" Lyra did not answer right away. Her eyes held a storm of thought, as if she too struggled to understand her own choice. Finally, she said, "More because you are not what they say you are. And I will not be the hand that silences that truth." The army continued to rumble in confusion, but the decision was made. Elias, the human commander, was no longer a prisoner waiting for death. He had become something else, something dangerous, something that unsettled the Xyrath to their core. And though he did not yet understand the depth of her decision, Elias knew one thing with certainty. The war had just changed. The Xyrath soldiers were frozen in place, unsure whether to obey or rebel. Their chants of anger had died down, replaced by whispers and uneasy murmurs. To them, what General Lyra had done was unthinkable. The human was supposed to die, punishment, warning, proof of their strength. But now Elias Kane stood alive, protected by the very person who should have ended him. Their minds struggled to reconcile the impossible sight. Their fearsome general, ruler of armies, showing an act of mercy, and more, a bold declaration toward a human. Some soldiers began to argue. "He is still an enemy," one shouted, his voice trembling with anger. We cannot allow this. Another growled, She has broken the code. Our honor demands blood. Lyra's gaze swept across them, sharp as steel. Do you wish to test me? She asked. Her voice held a calm danger that silenced even the loudest among them. They had all obeyed her countless times before. Now, they understood that disobedience would be more deadly than anything they could have imagined. Elias knelt, still catching his breath from the shock, trying to make sense of what had just happened. He had fought countless battles, survived ambushes, and faced death more times than he could count. And yet this moment, this simple, impossible act was unlike anything he had seen in war. His life had been spared not by weakness but by choice. Lyra had defied not only her orders but the very instincts of her people. Why? Elias whispered, unable to hide his astonishment. Lyra looked at him, her expression unreadable. I have watched humans for many years, she said slowly. I have studied your courage, your loyalty, the way you fight for one another even when it is foolish. You are different. This is why I acted. The words were simple, but their meaning was profound. Elias realized that this general, feared by countless systems, had seen something in humans that others could not. Something worth protecting, and in doing so she had tied her honor to his survival. The soldiers' murmurs turned into open arguments. Some swore they would report her, others questioned the order itself. It was chaos born of disbelief. Yet despite their confusion, none dared step forward. Lyra had claimed the human, and her claim was final in Xyrath law. To oppose her directly was to challenge a force greater than the strongest soldier. Elias slowly rose to his feet, his hand still bound, and met the gaze of the troops. He did not speak of fear or weakness. Instead, he nodded once to Lyra, acknowledging her decision without words. In that silent gesture, a strange understanding passed between them. Two leaders from different worlds, suddenly bound by a shared choice in the middle of a battlefield. Lyra's eyes softened slightly as she observed him. You are lucky, she said quietly. Luck and courage are not the same. One can die easily without the other. Elias allowed a small smile. Then I am lucky you are not like the rest of them. For the first time, a few soldiers lowered their weapons slightly, unsure what to do next. The human had not fled, had not struck, had not shown fear, and their general, who had once been an untouchable symbol of terror, now seemed human in her own strange way. Whispers grew louder, spreading from rank to rank. Did she just claim him? One soldier asked. Is this a trick? Another muttered. Lyra raised her hand, silencing them. There is no trick, she said. This human is under my protection. Anyone who tries to harm him will answer to me. That is final. Despite the weight of her words, tension remained. The soldiers were torn between loyalty to their general and their ingrained hatred of humanity. Some wanted to obey without question. Others whispered about rebellion, about revenge. Elias knew the danger was not over. Far from it. Even as Lyra protected him, he remained a target. A spark that could ignite chaos in an army already shaken to its core. As they stood there, the human and the alien general alone together, Elias began to understand the fragile balance he now inhabited. He was no longer simply a prisoner. He was a symbol, a test, a challenge to centuries of Xyrath beliefs. And he had survived the first step, not through cunning or strength, but because someone had chosen him. Finally, Lyra spoke again, her voice firm. We move now. If any of you wish to follow, do so. If not, leave. The army parted slowly, some stepping back in fear, some remaining uncertain. Elias, still kneeling for a moment, looked at Lyra. Where will we go? He asked quietly. Somewhere they cannot follow so easily, she replied. Her tone left no room for argument. Somewhere we can plan, and see if humans are truly as dangerous and as loyal as you claim. The soldiers watched them leave, their minds struggling to accept what they had witnessed. A human alive, protected by a general of the Xyrath, moving through their ranks unchallenged. It was a moment none would forget, a memory that would haunt the hierarchy of command for years to come. Elias walked beside Lyra. The first time in many hours he felt both fear and hope. The battlefield behind them burned, yet ahead lay uncertainty, and a strange, fragile alliance. In the heart of the enemy, humanity had survived, and the first act of that survival had been a kiss, defying expectation, and changing the rules of the war forever. The battlefield receded behind them. its smoke and ruin swallowing the cries of soldiers who did not understand what had just happened. Elias walked beside General Lyra, his hand still bound but his mind racing with questions he could not yet ask. The silence between them was not uncomfortable. It was measured, as if both were aware that words could shift the fragile balance that now held them together. Lyra led him through a narrow path between jagged rock formations, away from the main encampment. Her steps were careful but purposeful. Elias noticed that unlike most of her soldiers, she did not glance around nervously or speak loudly. She moved with the confidence of someone who knew the terrain, and perhaps the hearts of the soldiers she left behind. "You could have killed me," Elias said quietly, breaking the silence. Any of them would have done it without hesitation. Lyra did not answer immediately. Instead, she studied him, as if weighing the truth of his words against something deeper inside herself. "I could," she admitted at last, her voice low and firm. "But I did not. Because there is something in humans I have never seen in my own kind. You do not fight for glory. You do not fight for conquest. You fight for others." Elias considered this. He had fought countless battles, many of which had cost him comrades and friends. He had seen human courage tested beyond measure. And now this alien, a warrior feared across galaxies, was acknowledging it. For the first time in a long while, he felt a flicker of understanding between two very different worlds. "Why me?" he asked. "I am just one man. You have conquered entire fleets, entire planets. Why risk everything for me?" Lyra's gaze softened, a rare moment of vulnerability hidden beneath her armor. "Because you are not like the others. I have watched humans for a long time. You endure when logic says you should fall. You protect when strength says you could run. There is potential in you. I want to see if it is true." Elias remained quiet, absorbing her words. There was no false flattery, no hidden insult. Just a simple acknowledgement that his kind, fragile as they were, could surprise even the most formidable of alien warriors. For hours, they moved through jagged canyons and narrow passes, avoiding patrols and sentries. Lyra's knowledge of the terrain was precise. Every turn and shadow offered cover. Elias noticed that she frequently glanced behind them, calculating risks with a meticulous mind. She had defied her army to protect him, but she also knew that defiance could not remain hidden for long. The high command would notice, and the consequences would be severe. Finally, they reached a small outcrop overlooking a valley. Lyra gestured for Elias to sit, and he obeyed, still cautious. The landscape below was quiet, the kind of silence that came before storms. "We need to plan," she said, removing her helmet. Her face, fierce and striking, revealed the weight of responsibility that rested on her shoulders. "The High Command will not forgive this. They will send forces to reclaim control, to punish me, and anyone associated with you." Elias frowned. "So we are fugitives now? From both sides?" "In a way," she admitted. "But I believe humans are clever enough to survive. And I believe you are clever enough to survive with me." Elias's heart raced. He had fought wars before, but this was different. He was no longer just a commander of men. He was now a symbol of hope, a test of loyalty, and a spark that could ignite rebellion. Lyra's decision to protect him was not merely an act of defiance. It was a gamble that could reshape the course of the war. "You are risking everything," Elias said softly. "Your army, your honor." "Everything." She met his gaze unflinching. "I am aware. But sometimes a risk is worth taking. The universe has grown predictable, cruel. Perhaps it is time for something unpredictable. Something new." Elias understood then that she was not acting on impulse. Her choice was deliberate, calculated, and dangerous. The soldiers she left behind might follow orders or break ranks. The High Command would consider her a traitor. Yet she had chosen him, and in doing so had created a fragile alliance that neither side could predict. As night fell, they set up a small camp in the shadows of the rocks. Elias felt the weight of the day pressing on him, but also a strange sense of trust. Lyra did not sleep, her eyes scanning the horizon, weapons ready. Yet she occasionally glanced at him, a silent reassurance that he was not alone. For the first time since his capture, Elias allowed himself a small thought of hope. Perhaps humanity's greatest strength was not weapons or armies, but the ability to inspire trust, even in the heart of the enemy. And perhaps, just perhaps, this unlikely bond could change the tide of the war. The dawn broke slowly over the jagged rocks, casting long shadows across the valley. Elias had spent the night watching Lyra, marveling at her vigilance. She did not sleep deeply. Her silver eyes scanned every ridge, every dark crevice. Even when she briefly rested, her body remained tense, ready to strike or flee. Elias understood that trust was not given lightly in her world. It had to be earned. And tonight somehow he had earned it. "We cannot stay here long," Lyra said, her voice quiet as she packed their few supplies. "The High Command will realize I am gone soon. They will send forces to recover me. Or kill me." Elias nodded. "Then where do we go?" "We move east into territory they do not fully control. There are outposts and old supply caches from previous campaigns. We can hide there, plan our next steps." She paused, her gaze lingering on him. "And you must understand, we are no longer just enemies. You are now a symbol, human, a symbol of something dangerous to them." Elias swallowed, the weight of her words sinking in. He had survived capture, survived the battlefield, survived death itself. But now survival meant something more. It meant strategy, cunning, and navigating the unpredictable loyalty of an alien general and her warriors. They began their trek through narrow passes and craggy cliffs. Lyra led confidently, guiding him past patrol routes and energy sensors that would have detected them instantly. Despite the danger, Elias could not help but notice the precision of her movements, the sharpness of her instincts. He had fought many enemies before, but none like her. Hours passed in tense silence. Occasionally, Elias would ask questions about her army, her culture, or her experiences in war. Lyra answered carefully, revealing small pieces of herself, enough to build understanding, but not enough to reveal vulnerability. For the first time, he realized that she was not just a warrior, but a strategist, a thinker, and someone who saw value where others saw weakness. Finally, they reached an abandoned outpost hidden in a canyon, its walls scarred from long-forgotten battles. Lyra surveyed the area carefully before motioning for Elias to enter. "We can rest here for a while, but only briefly. We must prepare for what comes next." Inside, Elias took a moment to breathe. The air smelled of dust and metal, a ghost of the battles that had once raged here. Lyra crouched nearby, checking weapons and scanning the horizon. Despite the danger outside, there was an odd calmness within the walls, a temporary reprieve from the chaos. "You are risking everything," Elias said, breaking the silence. "Your army, your rank, all for me." Lyra looked at him, her eyes reflecting the dim light. "It is not just for you. It is for what you represent. Humans have something I have never seen. Resilience, loyalty, courage that is not tied to fear or strength. If the Zyrath ignore that, they will make a mistake, and I intend to make them face it." Elias felt a strange mix of fear and hope. He was a human, a single man in the middle of an alien empire's army. Yet here he was, walking beside one of the most feared generals in the galaxy. Alive because she had chosen to protect him. Their bond was fragile, untested, and dangerous, but it was real. The sound of distant engines broke their brief calm. Lyra immediately moved to the observation post, scanning the horizon. "They are coming," she said. "A patrol from the High Command. Not many yet, but we cannot be seen." Elias followed her lead as she directed him to a shadowed alcove. The patrol passed, their ship scanning the canyon but missing the outpost entirely. When the engines faded, Lyra exhaled, her shoulders relaxing slightly. "This is only the beginning. They will come with more." Elias nodded. "Then we prepare. Together." She glanced at him, her expression unreadable for a moment, then gave a slight nod. "Together," she agreed. As night fell over the canyon, they worked in silence, checking weapons, mapping patrol routes, and planning their next moves. Every decision carried the weight of survival. Every step could mean life or death. And yet, amid the tension, a strange trust had formed. Elias trusted her to protect him. She trusted him to survive and to represent his people in a way that could challenge centuries of prejudice. By the time they finally rested, the stars above the canyon were bright and distant. Elias sat beside Lyra, looking up at the sky. He thought of Earth, of the soldiers who had fought and died, of the people who still hoped for survival. And he realized that survival was no longer just about endurance, it was about choices, alliances, and courage that defied expectation. In that quiet moment, he understood that this alliance, born from a kiss on a battlefield, had the power to change the course of the war. Humanity had survived the first act of defiance. Now, with Lyra at his side, they could face the next and perhaps turn the tide of the galaxy. The next morning, the canyon was quiet. but tension hung in the air like a storm about to break. Elias and Lyra had spent the night planning their next steps. The Xyrath High Command would not forgive her defiance, and it was only a matter of time before larger forces were sent to capture them both. They needed allies, strategy, and speed. "We cannot face the full army head-on," Lyra said, pointing at a rough map scratched into the dirt with a metal rod. "But we can strike where they least expect it. Small squads, supply lines, communication centers. If we disrupt them carefully, we can survive longer and send a message. Humanity is not weak." Elias studied the map, nodding slowly. "We'll need resources, weapons, shelter, intelligence. If the High Command believes you are acting alone, they will come in force. But if they see the Xyrath soldiers questioning their orders, that fear can work for us." Lyra's eyes flicked toward him. "You understand tactics better than most humans I've studied. Perhaps this is why you survived so long." Elias allowed a faint smile, though his body still ached from the capture and battle. "We survive by adapting, the same way you do." They moved quickly, using the shadows of the canyon and hidden trails that only someone who had fought countless campaigns could know. Along the way, Lyra shared small pieces of her life, revealing the burden of command and the loneliness of leadership. Elias listened, learning not just about the enemy but about the woman who had chosen to protect him. Each revelation built a fragile bridge between two species that had known only war. As the sun rose higher, they reached a ruined Xyrath outpost that had been abandoned years ago. Its walls were cracked and pitted, but inside it offered space, cover, and the remnants of supplies. Lyra motioned for Elias to stay low as she scouted the perimeter. Her movements were precise and deliberate, each step calculated to avoid detection. After a tense moment, she returned. "It's safe for now," she said. "We can rest and organize here. But we must move quickly. They will send scouts soon." Inside the outpost, Elias examined the small cache of weapons and communication devices left behind. "If we can repair these," he said, holding up a scanner, "we can intercept their patrols, learn their plans before they act." Lyra nodded. "Good, and we will need more than that. We need soldiers willing to follow someone they have doubted for centuries. It will not be easy, but humans inspire loyalty in ways they do not expect. I have seen it in you." Elias felt a weight of responsibility press down on him. He had survived by courage and instinct, but now survival demanded leadership, trust, and careful strategy, and he could not do it alone. Lyra's choice to protect him had created a partnership, fragile and dangerous yet full of possibility. Hours passed as they worked. Elias repaired communication devices and set traps for approaching patrols, while Lyra prepared weapons and checked supplies. The silence of the canyon was broken only by their quiet conversation and the occasional distant rumble of patrols. Both were aware that discovery could mean death at any moment, yet the risk carried a strange exhilaration. Finally, as evening approached, the first patrol of the day came into view. Lyra and Elias observed from a hidden vantage point. The soldiers moved with confidence, expecting obedience from all who remained in the region. They did not know the general who had defied the High Command, nor the human who had survived capture and inspired courage. Elias leaned close. "They will be surprised. They already are," Lyra said. "And when they realize we are not afraid, they may hesitate. Fear is a weapon, if you use it correctly." The patrol passed the canyon and Lyra signaled Elias to release a small distraction, a series of noises and lights that suggested a larger force hiding nearby. The soldiers halted, their formation breaking as they scanned the terrain. The hesitation was brief, but it was enough. Lyra and Elias had created a moment of control in the chaos. When the patrol moved on, Lyra turned to him. "This is only the beginning," she said. "The High Command will escalate, but now we have the advantage of choice. We act, we survive, and we show them that humans and their allies are not to be underestimated." Elias nodded, feeling a mix of fear and exhilaration. He had faced death before, but this was different. This was survival with strategy, courage, and trust. And at his side was an alien general who had risked everything for him, creating a fragile alliance that could change the outcome of a war centuries in the making. As night fell over the canyon, Elias and Lyra stood side by side, watching the stars emerge. For the first time since his capture, Elias felt a sense of hope, not just for himself but for humanity. With Ra as an ally, and with courage guiding his every choice, he believed they could endure inspire, and perhaps even turn the tide of the galaxy. The dawn broke over the valley, painting the jagged cliffs in pale gold. Elias and Lyra moved quickly, their senses sharp. They had prepared for this moment. The High Command had sent a full battalion of Xyrath soldiers to reclaim the general and eliminate the human commander. But Elias and Lyra were ready. Their plan relied not on brute force but on strategy, courage, and the unexpected alliance between two very different species. The enemy forces moved with confidence, expecting an easy victory. Their ships hovered above, scanning the canyon for signs of resistance. Ground troops advanced with precision, believing that a defiant general and a single human could not possibly pose a threat. They underestimated both the human mind and the alien general's cunning. Elias crouched behind a rocky outcrop, checking a small device that would disrupt communication signals for a brief but critical window. Lyra adjusted her armor, her silver eyes scanning the enemy positions. "When the signal goes down," she whispered, "we strike. Small squads first, then the patrols. We confuse them, divide them, and force hesitation. That hesitation is our advantage," Elias nodded. "And the rest?" Lyra smiled faintly. "We inspire fear. They have never seen a human survive what they expected to be his death. They have never seen their own general defy orders. That doubt spreads faster than any weapon." The device hummed softly, and suddenly the enemy communications went silent. Confusion rippled through the battalion. Soldiers looked to one another, seeking guidance, but no orders came. For the first time in years, the rigid discipline of the Xyrath faltered. Elias and Lyra moved quickly, leading a small strike team that included soldiers who had chosen to follow Lyra despite her defiance. They hit key positions with precision, disabling patrols and supply lines. Lyra's strategies were flawless, and Elias's human ingenuity allowed them to anticipate enemy moves, using terrain and technology in ways the Xyrath had not expected. Amid the chaos, Elias realized the true power of their alliance. The soldiers who had once seen him as weak now followed his lead. The human mind, clever and adaptive, combined with Lyra's strength and knowledge, created a force that was unpredictable and terrifying. Every move they made planted seeds of doubt in the hearts of the enemy. As the battle raged, Elias and Lyra found themselves on a cliff overlooking the main enemy fleet. The ships were enormous, bristling with weapons, yet now they hovered cautiously, unsure how to respond to the guerrilla tactics below. Lyra turned to Elias. "This is the moment," she said. "We show them that courage and loyalty are stronger than fear and orders." Elias swallowed, feeling the weight of what they were about to do. "Then we fight," he said. Together they descended into the chaos. Their forces moved with precision, striking critical points, confusing the enemy, and rallying the soldiers who were willing to follow someone who had defied centuries of expectation. The battlefield, once a place of certainty for the Xyrath, became a maze of doubt. Hesitation spread through the ranks, breaking formations that had never broken before. In the midst of the fight, Elias found himself face to face with a patrol captain. He raised his weapon, but the captain froze, seeing Lyra in the distance, standing tall and commanding, protecting the human beside her. The captain faltered, then lowered his weapon. Hesitation turned to surrender. The ripple effects spread across the battlefield. More and more Xyrath soldiers paused, questioned, and eventually laid down their arms. The High Command's battalion, expecting total obedience, was now fractured. A single act of defiance, the kiss, the protection of a human life, had changed everything. By the time the sun reached its peak, the battlefield had shifted completely. The remaining Xyrath forces retreated, leaving behind a territory no longer ruled by fear. Elias and Lyra stood together, surrounded by soldiers who had once been enemies, now witnesses to something extraordinary: humanity's courage and an alien general's willingness to defy expectation. Lyra turned to Elias, her silver eyes softer than he had ever seen. "You have done well," she said quietly. "Not just survived, but inspired. That is what makes humans different, dangerous, and valuable." Elias nodded, feeling the weight of the day, the loss and victory, and the strange bond that had formed between them. "We did this together," he said. Humans and Xyrath side by side. The soldiers around them murmured in awe. Some had never believed a human could survive. Others had never believed a general would defy her army for a single life. But now all of them understood. Courage, loyalty, and trust could overcome even the strictest orders and the strongest weapons. As the sun set over the canyon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Elias and Lyra stood together, looking at a battlefield changed forever. The galaxy would remember this day, not as a story of conquest or defeat, but as a story of courage, alliance, and the power of choices that defy expectation. In that moment, Elias realized that humanity's strength was never in its numbers, weapons, or technology. It was in the human spirit, the ability to inspire, to endure, and to stand firm in the face of impossible odds. And with Lyra at his side, that spirit had proven unstoppable. The war was far from over, but the first victory had been claimed. And at the center of it all was a human, a general, and a kiss that had changed the course of history,